Okay, so today what we're talking about is the new embroidery online collection called the Freestanding Lace Bouquet. And I actually think that that number is wrong. I think the number is 1245, the Freestanding Lace Bouquet. And this collection is a brand new collection, and this month it is our gift with purchase. So it's free with a $69 or more downloadable designs purchase. And what I want to do today is to go over with you some ideas about how to use this collection. And let's see, pardon me, I just got too many things open on my computer apparently. There we go, let's close that out. Okay, great. So we're going to go over some project ideas of things that you can do with these lace flowers, and then we'll go through the step-by-steps of how they're made. And finally, we will go over some tips that should help you to be more successful with actually creating these flowers. So on the right-hand side of the screen, of your screen, you should have a little control panel, and that control panel has an orange arrow that will open and close your control panel. And I also want to check one more thing here. Okay, great. That will open and close your control panel. And if you open your control panel, you'll see a little area called questions. You can type in questions to me at any time, and I'll pause periodically throughout the presentation to answer those questions. To be able to, if you have questions anytime, and then also we'll have some time at the end specifically for questions. So feel free to use that questions panel anytime you have a question throughout the presentation. And then if you want to minimize that, you just click the little orange arrow and it will close back up. Let me introduce myself and also the project designer for this project, for the projects that you'll be seeing here. My name's Christy Burcham and I'm the presenter. I've been with Embroidery Online for a total of about 9 years, and I have been a number of different things since I've been working here, but primarily I have worked as an educator, and now I work in marketing. So we also have Micah Schrock. Micah helped to design this presentation and also a number of the projects you'll be seeing. She has been with Embroidery Online for, I believe, 11 years. So she won't be joining us online today, but she certainly was instrumental in putting this project together. I want to introduce you to also a couple of other people. John Burcham is the digitizer for these collections, and actually he designed these collections, these flowers. So they're his own original artwork, and he spent quite a bit of time, actually almost a year, putting them together, experimenting, and learning how to actually develop these flowers so that you would be able to create these beautiful projects that you're going to see. And just in case you're wondering, in case you noticed, he does have the same last name as me. He's my brother-in-law. I also want to introduce you to Jen Tilbin. Jen is our blog editor, so for those of you who follow our blog, and she's also the instruction writer for this project. So the great instructions that you see that come along with the project, those were put together by Jen. And so I just wanted to introduce you to her as well. So let's talk a little bit about some ideas of how these flowers might be used. It's springtime. We're thinking a lot about spring presentations. Any of these flowers that we're creating can be used in the same way that silk flowers can be. So if you look at ideas for silk flowers, it will give you a lot of ideas of how you can use these lace flowers. Anything from an Easter hat to altar arrangements, to centerpieces. We also have been working on a number of wedding type projects such as bouquets, flower arrangements, things for flower girls, and party favors. And one of the things I love so much about these lace flowers is the ability for you to completely customize the color. So that allows you to come up with some really great wedding projects because you can match any color that you want. Even when you can't find a silk flower in that color, you can make a lace flower. Let's see, we have a couple of questions. One question is, what makes freestanding lace different from other laces stitchwork-wise? Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to hold on that one a little bit because it'll take a little bit more explanation. So when we get a little bit further in the presentation, I will address that question. Another question is, how much is the collection? The collection is, retail value is $39.99. During the month of April, it's only available as a gift with purchase. So if you want it during the month of April, you can purchase $69 worth of downloadable designs and you'll get this collection for free. Starting May 1st, it will be available for sale. Let's look at a couple of other project ideas. You see a lot of silk flowers in headbands, barrettes, and hat accessories. And you're also starting to see silk flowers putting dimension onto handbags, belts, shoes. You see them in a lot of places. Some unexpected places that you can use these lace flowers would be things like decorative pillows. I love this pillow that's got the silk flowers all over it, and you could do something very similar with the lace flowers. They also make great accents for picture frames, lampshades, and putting together wreaths. Let's talk about the supplies that you need when you're putting together these collections. First of all, you need embroidery thread. We're going to recommend that you use the same embroidery thread in the bobbin as you use in the needle. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more because you can experiment a little bit with these flowers. But in general, when you're doing freestanding lace, you want to use the same embroidery thread in the bobbin that you use in the needle. Now, we use the timeless 40-weight embroidery thread. We also can highly recommend the Isocord 40-weight embroidery thread. We have tested these flowers with both of these threads, and they work great with those particular threads. They hold up well. They are going to not break, and when you're doing lace where you want to be able to let it run for a while without having to sit and babysit it, a thread that's not going to break on you is going to be really valuable. Okay, I've got a couple of questions over here. Will the webinar be available to download? Yes, it will. You'll receive an email link to be able to download this webinar later, and so you can review it again at your leisure. And then another question, you're seeing the presentation graphics are being folded and duplicated. That could be based on your screen resolution. The best thing to do is to adjust the size of the window that you're looking at. So you should see a window, and in the lower right corner you can click and drag that window. And if you drag it smaller, you should be able to drag it such that you're seeing just a single view instead of a duplicated view. If you're still having problems after that, you may want to adjust your screen resolution, and you can do that by going to your Start menu and then your Control panel, and from there you can adjust your screen resolution. Try going to a smaller screen resolution or a larger screen resolution. Another question is, I've heard of timeless thread. Is it cotton or poly or rayon? It's a polyester. It's a 40-weight polyester embroidery thread. It is designed to look like a rayon thread, and it's got that really shiny surface to it, but it is a polyester. Okay, great. Looks like we've got everybody where they can see the screen like they wanted to. All right, the next supply I want to talk to you about are needles, and what we recommend are the organ titanium needles. And a size that we'd recommend for this is an 80-12, and I want to pull up our website real quick and show you how you can find these on our website. We recommend the titanium needle because they are longer lasting. So a titanium needle is going to last about 5 times as long as a needle that does not have that titanium coating. And to find them, we have them under supplies and needles. And then here you can see all the different types of needles that we carry are listed, and they're all organ needles, but I wanted to pull this up to show you that if you're looking for titaniums, over here on the left-hand side you can check off titanium coated, and that'll show you the titanium needles. And then if you want sharps, which is what we recommend for the lace, you want to use a sharp needle, you can check off sharp, and then the size we want is 8012. And that way we can narrow it down to the type of needle we want. Now we actually have two different types of titanium size 80 needles, and I wanted to bring this up to show you there are two types. One says embroidery needles and one says organ needles. So embroidery needles, when they're specifically labeled embroidery needles, whether it's on Embroidery Online or if you see them in a store, embroidery needles have a larger eye, and that's going to accommodate special threads. The ones that don't say embroidery are going to have a standard size eye. If you're using a 40 weight polyester, you can get by with just using the regular organ needles that don't have the embroidery eye, because that polyester thread holds up well enough. It does not necessarily need the larger size eye. But if you're using some specialty threads, which we'll be talking about some suggestions for that in a moment, then you definitely want to use the embroidery eye needle. So for example, if you want to use a metallic thread, you definitely want to use an embroidery eye needle. And on each of these needles, if you click on the needle, you'll actually see some details that will help you to know which is the right needle. So it'll tell you how many hours it needs to be replaced, the size of the eye, the size of the needle, the type of needle, and then what kinds of fabrics it would be recommended for. Okay, let's go back here. So in general, a titanium needle needs to be replaced every 25 hours or so of actual sewing time. So what I like to do to keep track of when I need to replace my needle is I actually keep like a little sticky note right at my machine, and as I have minutes for my design, so I pull up my design and it'll say this design takes 90 minutes, then I'll make a note and keep track of that so that I know when I need to replace my needle. Another recommendation is if you start to have problems, if you start to have a lot of thread breakage unexpectedly, or if your thread starts to nest unexpectedly, you may want to replace your needle. It's an easy thing to fix, and it will often, if there's a little burr on your needle, it will cause a lot of problems. So it's always a good idea to change that needle if you're having any problems at all. And then finally, the last supply you're going to need in addition to the thread and the needle is a stabilizer. You're going to use a water-soluble stabilizer, which is going to wash out completely. And you can either use a film type stabilizer or a mesh type water-soluble stabilizer. I recommend that you use a mesh type. That's my personal preference. Micah, who did most of the projects, also tends to use a mesh type. You can use a water-soluble clear film type. If you do, you may find you need an extra layer. So with the mesh type, we typically use 2 layers. With the film type, you may need 3 layers depending on the type. Now there's a very heavy film type called Badge Master, and with Badge Master you can probably just use 2 layers. My preference to using the mesh as opposed to using the film is that the mesh tends to not perforate as easily as the film types. So with something like this, with the freestanding lace, where there's a lot of needle penetrations, I don't want that to begin to perforate, which will pull it away from itself, and then it will cause the threads not to match up in the end, and it can cause your lace to fall apart if you have holes in your stabilizer. So I like to use the mesh type because it tends to hold up well. A couple more questions I see over here. When can the collection be purchased alone? May 1st is when it's available to be purchased on its own. Another question, can you do several flowers at the same time? Using one color at a time for all the flowers so you don't have to do so many color changes. Yes, you can definitely put multiple flowers into one hoop. Just make sure that you stabilize accordingly. So 2 layers should be fine with a mesh type. But remember that the more stitches you put into something, the more likely it is to begin to pull away. So if you start to put lots of flowers into one hoop, eventually you could have some problems if you don't put enough stabilizer there. I definitely would not recommend trying to do it on one layer of stabilizer and multiple flowers in the same hoop. So let's look at how these flowers are actually put together. There are some terms that are used in the instructions, and I want to show you in this up-close picture here what they are. So one's called an eyelet, and you'll see the eyelets are like an eyelet buttonhole, and they're typically on the inside of the flower. The buttonette goes into the eyelet, and the buttonette will usually be found along the edge here. It just looks like a little French knot almost around the outside. And then the tab. This is something new, even if you've been doing freestanding lace with us before. If you've done some of the village pieces, you may be familiar with the eyelet and the buttonettes, but the tab is something new because this is what's used to actually secure the flowers or leaves to a stem, pardon my misspelling here, to be able to attach them to a stem to create a floral wire onto that, or to attach them onto a project. So that's what that little tab is used for. Now I want to go back and answer the question about what makes the freestanding lace different so that it actually works as freestanding lace. It actually is a matter of putting the stitches together in such a way that they are creating a fabric. So if you think about the way that fabrics are woven together, essentially what you're doing when you're creating a freestanding lace is you're weaving those threads together. This is why you can't just take a regular design and stitch it onto water soluble and have it work. It has to have something that it's woven into. So our digitizers know how to create a special layer of stitches to allow that to almost create a fabric effect so that it weaves together. And with these flowers you can really see it because a lot of the flower is sort of a loosely woven net of threads and stitches that are put together. It also takes a lot of thought and consideration when you have multiple colors. So some of these flowers do have a couple of different color changes. You can always do them all in one color if you like, but some of them have a couple color changes, and in order to make that work you have to be sure that those two color changes are woven together so that they don't fall apart. Let's start with the lily. The lily has two main pieces to the lily flower. One piece is the stamen that goes in the middle, and then you have the lily part that goes on the outside. So to do the stamen part, you're first going to stitch it onto the water-soluble stabilizer. We recommend the mesh, and we recommend 2 layers, and you're going to stitch that out. And in this case, because it's yellow, we're using both a yellow in the needle and in the bobbin. When the designs are complete, you're going to wash away the stabilizer. And what we recommend when you're washing away the stabilizer is to cut it out first before you wash it away. So instead of taking the whole great big piece of stabilizer out of your hoop and taking it directly to your sink and starting to rinse it, go ahead and cut the pieces out, leaving maybe ½ inch around the outside of the designs. That way there's less to rinse away. This stabilizer is primarily starch. So if you take that whole sheet of stabilizer to your sink, you can actually clog it up because you're filling your sink with starch. So you want to just have a little bit around the outside of the design and then rinse it away. It'll also save you time because you don't have to sit and rinse it until it's all gone. It's a lot faster when you have less to rinse away. So once you've finished rinsing away the design, you're going to lay it out to dry. We recommend that you lay it on something that has ventilation underneath it. So for example, you could put it onto a mesh basket. I like to use like a mesh that you would find at an office supply store, and you can lay it out onto one of those mesh baskets. That way the air can circulate underneath the design as well. Now with this lily, because we're wanting to create that rounded piece in the middle, we want to wrap it around a pen or something else round. So it could be a dowel rod or a chopstick, anything round, and we're going to button it through the eyelets to create that tube. You could button it without the pin, but then you're not going to get quite as round and smooth of a stamen as you do when you do it around a pin. You can take it when it's just slightly damp and pin it and button it around the pen, but make sure that it's dry enough that it's not going to stick to the pen while you're allowing it to dry. Now to create the body of the lily. The body of the lily, you're again going to stitch it out on your water-soluble stabilizer and then rinse it away. And here you can really see the details of that mesh that's created with the threads. Now, with this lily, you're actually going to gently wrap it around to form the lily shape. And you're going to button the little buttonette into the eyelet at the bottom. So there's only one button to button in. As you're wrapping it around, you're going to curve one side into the lily and then wrap this other piece around and button it in. When you're doing these, you can button them always to the inside. So that buttonette's always going to go to the inside of the flower. That just kind of help you remember how it goes together. When you're looking at your piece and you're going to wrap it around, you're always going to wrap it so the buttonette goes to the inside of the flower. And then you can see the little tab is hanging down. Now, how are we going to take these two pieces that we've created, this lily piece and then the stamen, how are we going to put those together to actually make the lily? Well, to put them together, we're going to use a small piece of floral wire. And we're going to start by putting the stamen onto the floral wire. So we're going to insert the floral wire up into the middle of the stamen, and you can see how this tab is hanging down, and it's kind of just butted up against that piece of floral wire. The first thing we're going to do is just wrap that with floral tape just a few times around to secure it. So you're going to wrap this tab onto the floral wire, and then you're going to take this entire piece, the floral wire and the stamen together, and nestle it down into the lily. And then as you pull it down, you're going to pull it down far enough that this tab of the stamen is also sticking out the bottom of the lily, and you also have the bottom of the lily tab sticking out. Now you're going to wrap the floral wire around both pieces. So you're going to wrap it around the bottom of the lily, and be sure to catch a little bit of the lily also. So don't just get the tab, you want to grab a little bit of that lily, and you're going to wrap that around. And that creates the freestanding flower. And you can see you have this piece sticking down, and now depending on how long that floral wire is, you can use that to arrange it just like you would a regular floral stem you would purchase. Let's go through another one of these flowers step by step. Each of these flowers has its own set of instructions, but the basics are the same. I see a couple questions here. Let me pause and answer some questions. First time you've joined a webinar and the pictures aren't changing. If the pictures aren't changing, it could be possibly because of your internet speed. If the pictures aren't changing, sometimes they'll change a little bit slower than they change, than I'm changing them here. And if that's an issue that your internet speed is not allowing your screen to keep up with my screen, then what I'd recommend is to watch the recording, because the recording, you can download the entire recording and then watch it, so you don't have to worry about the internet speed. Another question, how stiff are the flowers? That's a great question. The flowers are going to be fairly stiff, and that's going to be dependent on how much of the stabilizer you rinse away. So if you want to create a really stiff flower, you're going to just barely rinse it away until you can't see the stabilizer anymore. If you want them to be a little bit softer, then you rinse it out a little bit more. So the more stabilizer you leave in, the stiffer they're going to be, because again, that stabilizer is like a starch. If you rinse it out and you find that your flour is just feeling a little bit too floppy, you can restarch it, and you can do that a couple of different ways. You can starch it just with a regular spray starch, so you would lay it out onto a towel, spray it with spray starch, and then place a pressing cloth over it and iron it, and then it'll stiffen up. Or you can also re-stiffen it by actually taking the scraps of your stabilizer and dissolving them in water, and then you can coat that with a paintbrush onto your lace flowers to stiffen them back up a little bit more. Depending on how stiff they are, it's going to give you a little bit different look, and so when I show you a couple more flowers later on, I'll show you the different looks you can get depending on whether the lace is more stiff or a little bit less stiff. So let's look at how to do the rose. The rose is done in the same basic way that the lily is done, but it's a little bit different. When you look at the rose itself, in fact, let me pull up that design sheet. You can see what that looks like. With this collection, the collection PDF is actually available right here on the page. You can see it prior to purchase. And let's look. This is what the design looks like. We'll zoom in here. The rose petals. So you can see it kind of spirals in. And that's creating all the rose petals at once by actually rolling them up into a rose shape. If you ever made roses out of clay or out of bread dough, I used to make them out of bread dough when I was a kid, you can actually, it's a similar effect to creating a long strip and then rolling it into a rose. Okay, so you're going to stitch it out, rinse it away, and then after it's done, we need something to roll it around. So a chopstick, a pencil, just something to give you something to grip on as you're rolling it around. So we recommend a chopstick, and what you're going to do as you start is when you start, put your thumb on the tab and hold that onto the chopstick, and then start wrapping the rose around that chopstick. You can wrap it as tightly as you like because you can always loosen it back up when you get to the end. So I recommend wrapping it fairly tightly and then allowing it to loosen at the end to determine how full you want that rose to look. The instructions tell you to keep the bottom edge even, and when we're talking about the bottom edge, what we're talking about is the bottom edge of which is going to end up being a straight edge of the rose that is going to align with this tab. So it's going to be the bottom part here. The parts that have the scalloped edges to them is the top, and the bottom edge is the smoother edge. That's the edge that you want to keep as straight as possible. Another question is, when rinsing the flowers, do you do this under running water or do you soak and rinse? We recommend that you're going to do it under running water. Soaking and rinsing them will typically make them too limp, and then you're going to not get the stiffer rose shape that you need when you go to put it together. So rinsing it under running water is what we recommend. Can they be stitched on mylar or organza for a different look? Yes, definitely. You can stitch these onto mylar, onto organza. You'll just have to, when you do mylar or organza, then you'll need to cut that out around the outside edge of the shape when done. But they do work well with that. Because of that loose net fill, you can still see some of the fabric through. And another question, do you wrap when they are damp or dry? You can do it either way, and you're going to get different looks depending on whether you wrap it while it's completely dry or whether it is a little bit damp. I'll show you some close-ups here in a moment to see the different looks that you get. But if you want a really crisp edge with a really smooth finish to your rose, then you're going to not wrap it until it's completely dry. If you want it to have more of a curled, maybe more natural looking rose, then you can, when it's just still a little bit damp, you can go ahead and wrap it at that point. So once you've wrapped the spiral onto itself, you're going to pull the buttonette into the body of the flower, and you're going to pull it through the eyelet. And we recommend using these alligator clamps. You can use tweezers or a stiletto, but I'll show you a little bit more about these alligator clamps later. Now, if you want to attach this rose onto a stem, then what you're going to do is to turn that finished rose upside down onto a table. And that's going to help stabilize it while you're doing your work. So turn it upside down onto a table. You're going to take the stem and insert it into that spiral that you created. And there's 2 tabs that come off of the rose. You're going to secure both of those tabs onto the floral wire. Now, if you want to add leaves, this freestanding lace leaf is one of the designs in the collection. You're going to add the leaves by attaching the tab of the leaf onto and you can see that the design for the leaves is actually 3 slightly different sizes. You can enlarge these, so if you want a little bit larger leaf, you can enlarge these, but we recommend not going very big, not more than about 20% larger, because the more you enlarge them, that can affect the quality of the freestanding lace mesh that's been created. So just beware that with freestanding lace, typically you can't size them very much. But we have sized the leaves, and you can size them up just a little bit. Let's move that back out of the way. So to create leaves at different intervals, wrap the tab of the leaf onto the stem, and then wrap a few more times before adding another leaf. And then you can continue to do so. So you can put them up close to the flower, or you can have them going down the stem. Now, each of the flowers has a little bit different instructions, and there is a full set of instructions that comes with the collection that's going to walk you through step by step each flower. So there's a set of instructions for the rose, one for the lily, one for the orchid, which is this one that we're looking at here. The orchid is actually my favorite, and we're going to have a project a little bit later this week posted up on the blog on taking this orchid and turning it into a Mother's Day corsage. So I'm pretty excited about that project. In addition, there's also a mum, and the instructions for that mum are on the project PDF, and then the lace butterflies. The lace butterflies actually are pretty simple. You can stitch them out, and then they're done. There's not any steps to putting them together. So I'm here, and I will show you that mum. So the mum is actually done a little bit differently than the other flowers because each piece is a ring that's added. So you create the base, and then you can see you stitch out the additional rings and then button those rings into each inside ring of the design. And there's a diagram here that will show you which buttons you need to button to put the whole thing together. There are step-by-step instructions for each flower in the PDF that comes with it. Now let's talk about some project ideas and some other ideas for creating these flowers. One thing to really get the full effect out of these flowers is to combine them together. So this particular project, which I'll show you a larger picture of in a moment, uses the lily, the orchid, and the rose together into one project, plus a number of leaves. And you can start to see the differences by changing the colors. So we've got a peach and then a hot pink and then a mauve lily all used together in the same project. You can also mix these flowers with silks. This is my favorite way to use them, is to take the lace flower and then take some silk flowers and combine them together. To show you the difference, for those of you who are asking about how stiff the flowers are, and then also how they look whether you assemble them dry or wet. So this one is assembled dry. You can see how it's really has a really smooth finish. It's very precise looking rose. If you want one that's more of an organic rose where the pieces kind of start to curl back like a rose in bloom, that's created by doing it with when it's still a little bit wet. Another fun thing to do with these roses is to mix the colors up. So earlier we said specifically you want to use the same thread in the needle and the bobbin, but if you want to change the look, you can change the color in the needle and the bobbin. So we're using the same thread type, but we're changing the color. So here in this rose we did a white needle thread and then a red bobbin thread. And you can see it gives you a really interesting look. With this one, we did 2 different shades of pink. Oh, a good question. Can you sell these flowers if you're asked to sell them? These are what we call a crafter's collection, and what that means is these flowers are you're allowed to create them for craft shows and things of that nature, but in a limited quantity. And we have the full details of that on our website about our different types of licenses. But with a crafter's collection, you can sell 25 pieces at a craft show. And then if you want to sell an additional 25, you can buy another collection. You get another 25 licenses to sell those pieces. So that allows you to do craft shows or to do something special for someone, to do it for hire, as opposed to a full license collection where you can only use them for personal use. So yes, you can do these for hire, but it is in a limited quantity. Another couple questions, can any weight of thread be used, or is one weight better to use? These are digitized for a 40 weight thread, so that's what we're going to recommend. I have tried them with a little bit of a variation with a 50 weight and then also with a 30 weight, but they really do best with the 40 weight. Wouldn't go any heavier than a 30 weight or any lighter than a 50 weight. Especially when you go lighter, it may not hold together properly. So we recommend that you stick with the 40 weight thread, but different types of thread can be used. So if you want to use like a metallic or even a cotton thread, as long as it falls in that 40 weight, you should be fine. Can the flowers be resized as well as the leaves? The flowers can be resized a little bit. So just keep in mind that you always want to do a test, and you want to keep it less than 20% change. Any more than that, and the pieces that create the architecture of the rose will start to fall apart. What about using metallic threads or variegated? Let me see if I don't have one pulled up. You can use a metallic or a variegated thread. I'm going to just warn you now that with metallic thread, you definitely are going to have to babysit it, because metallic thread is not really loving to be turned into lace. It does break more, of course, than a regular polyester. And there are so many stitches in a lace piece that you really have to kind of watch that metallic thread. If you're going to use a metallic thread, be sure you use an embroidery eye for that metallic thread, and just be sure that you're really watching it. We have done one where we actually used a metallic thread in the needle and then a polyester thread in the bobbin, and it turned out pretty good. Variegated threads should run fine. Variegated threads tend to be just a tiny bit heavier, so most variegated threads are going to be about a 35 weight, but you do have a few variegated threads that are actually a 40 weight. But either of those should work okay. A question about using mylar wrap thread that appears as a metallic. I actually haven't tried that particular thread. My expectation is it would probably work fine, but again, you'd probably need to watch it because it's a wrapped thread. Wrapped thread does have a tendency to shred occasionally, so you would just need to watch it. Make sure you slow down the machine if you need to keep the thread from breaking. Okay, I think we've answered all the questions so far. Let's go on to the next slide here. Using different types of thread will give you different looks. So we've been talking about metallic, variegated. This is actually solar thread. And for those of you who have been embroidering for a while, you know solar thread had some real popularity probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And I think this is a really fun and different way to bring it back because with the solar thread, it's white indoors, and then when you take it outside, it changes to a color. So with these flowers, you can really get a really intense color because the entire flower is made out of that solar thread. So for example, here's a floral arrangement using the solar thread, and you can see it inside, you have the white flowers, and then when you take it outside, you get the color. Now, you don't have to just use the wire, which is how these are created, with using the wire to assemble them together. You can also sew these flowers on. So this is a wedding dress that we've been working on where we're adding the flowers onto the back of the dress. And you can see that, let me see if you can, right in this area here. It's actually just hand tacked to the dress. So we created the flower first, and then just using a hand sewing needle and thread, then we tacked it onto the dress. So if instead of wanting to use wire to put it onto a softer project, then sew it on. Or you can use hot glue to attach the flower to the project. Let's talk about some tips for putting these things together. The alligator clamps, we talked about those briefly earlier. These are really helpful for helping you get that little buttonette through the eyelet of the flowers. And what we love about these alligator clamps is they have a tweezer tip on them, but the tweezer only opens a small way. So you just have about a centimeter, almost 2 centimeters of length here that opens up, and then the rest of it stays straight. So this allows you to insert the tweezers, the clamps, into the buttonette and then open them. And the whole thing doesn't open, just the tip. And that keeps you from spreading that eyelet open too far. And then you can grasp onto the buttonette and pull it back through. Some other tips. You can mold the flowers while they're still a little bit wet if you want to create different shapes. So if we go back to that this one, to this arrangement, you can see that we really sculpted and each one looks different. And that's done by molding them while they're still a little bit wet. If you do them while they're dry, they're all pretty much going to turn out to be the same shape. So if you like that precision, then do them when they're dry. But if they're a little bit wet, you can really experiment with how they're formed and how they're shaped. Another tip is if you're putting them onto the floral wire using the floral tape, if you've not worked with floral tape before, one thing to keep in mind is it needs to stretch a little bit in order for it to actually stick to it. So when you're wrapping it around, don't just wrap it. You really want to pull it taut. And as you pull it, it's going to stretch just a little bit. In fact, you'll see it kind of lighten. The color of the tape will lighten because it's stretching it out. That's what's really going to allow it to, the adhesive that's on that floral tape, to activate and to allow it to wrap onto that wire that you're using. And then another really important tip, and this is with any kind of freestanding lace, is to make sure your tension is in balance on your embroidery machine. If you haven't had your machine serviced in quite a while and you're going to be doing a lot of lace, I would recommend that you get the machine serviced and make sure that that tension is in balance. If you have been keeping your machine maintained, just make sure that you've got your top tension and your bottom tension set properly. And the reason that that's so important with lace is basically, as we talked about before, you're creating a weave with this lace that it has to interlock together. And if one, the top or the needle thread, is too loose, then that weave doesn't really form and you can end up with basically just a ball of thread. So make sure that the tension is balanced. If you're doing lace and you find out when it's done it just kind of looks sloppy, it doesn't look like it's really like lace, it just looks more like the threads are kind of balled up, then it's probably your tension. Another question, what needle size and type is best? For metallic, should a metallic needle be used? Yes, definitely. I would recommend, if you have access to a metallic needle, to use that metallic needle with the metallic thread. Typically a size 80/12 needle is going to be best, and I really do recommend that titanium coated needle. Another question, can you have the presentation sent to you? Yes, a copy of the presentation will be sent to all of the attendees. You'll get a link to be able to view both the PowerPoint that we're looking at and then also the recording of the presentation. Oh, very good tip. The tip is make sure the stabilizer is not too tight in the hoop. too tight and it will pull. That's a really good tip. When you're putting your stabilizer into your hoop, you want to make sure that it's smooth and it's straight and there are no wrinkles in it, and also that the screw is completely tight. But you don't want to stretch that stabilizer. If you pull that stabilizer so much that you're actually stretching it, think about the tension that that creates on the stabilizer, and then as soon as the needle starts to go in it, because there's tension on that stabilizer, it can create holes in the stabilizer as you're stitching. So it can really cause a problem with lace in particular, and it also can cause it to not line up properly. Another question, does that mean changing the tensions from the standard embroidery tension with the bobbin tighter than the needle? Typically with lace, we leave them in the standard embroidery tension, and so there is sort of a good side and a back side to the lace because the bobbin tension is a little bit tighter than the needle tension. So when you look at these flowers, the side that shows is the front side, the good side. And when you look at the back side, if you look closely, you can tell the difference because the bobbin thread is pulling tighter. Some people like to experiment it because they want it to look exactly the same on the front and the bob and the top, but the way they've been digitized is that they are digitized for that typical embroidery tension, so that people don't have to change it for lace. But it does mean making sure that it's well balanced so that it's not so tight that it's pulling the thread too tight. The bobbin thread's not so tight that it's pulling that top thread too much. I want to share a couple of resources for you that can help you if you're creating these flowers. First of all, of course, are the instructions that come with them that you can download, that will come in your download, but they also can be downloaded from the website at this View Collection PDF link. So from the home page, if you click on any of the banners that take you to the lace, there's a View Collection PDF, and you can download the PDF from there. Also, I would point you to our blog, which is DIYembroidery.com, and there is also a link to this blog on our website. And you'll find there is a post currently about the lace that shows the different project ideas, and then we'll have another post later this week about another project idea with the lace. But we also have projects of all types, and you can actually search. So let's search for lace. And we have previous projects you can look at. So we had one on the lace cross, and then I think there's one. Additional projects with, here's a lace bowl that we did by actually glittering it, so you could glitter these. So our blog is a place that you can go to find tips and ideas about doing lace. Another resource page that I would recommend to you is this page. I created a new board just to flip and show it to you. If you go to Embroidery Online's Pinterest page, you'll see our boards. The most recent board is the Lace Bouquet Project Ideas. On that board, you'll see lots of ideas for using these flowers. Pretty well, any place that you can use a silk flower, you can use one of the lace flowers. And then finally, check us out on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/embroideryonline, and you'll find we post ideas regularly, and we also love for you to post your ideas to our Facebook page on Embroidery Online. Oh, I love this tip from one of you attendees, and that is have extra wet stabilizer, have a jar in the refrigerator marked with liquid stabilizer. So you can take a jar, dissolve your liquid stabilizer straps into that jar, and keep it in the fridge to keep it fresh. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Just want to show you one last project, and that is this freestanding lace cake. So if you want to create a cake that's going to last a little longer, maybe for a wedding shower or just for a special project, this cake was done by using styrofoam pieces, which we wrapped with fabric, and we did embroider the sides of the fabric, wrapped them, and we just attached the fabric to that block with a glue gun. And this is Micah's project, and it really turned out beautiful. And then doing different layers to create the final piece. And what I really love is she created a monogram on the very top. And then taking those flowers and creating this beautiful cascade. So instead of icing flowers, you have these beautiful lace flowers. And this can be customized to create the colors of the wedding or the shower, to create something that's really unique and special. The other thing that you could do is, if you're someone who hosts a lot of showers, is to make it a little less customized and use the same project more than once. To actually put the flowers onto the cake, we recommend that before you glue them, pin them. So because it's styrofoam, it's very easy to take little pins, T-pins, and just pin them into the project. And then once you're sure that they are where you want them to be, you can hot glue them. And if there's any areas where you have some open space, you can fill that in with leaves. So do lots of leaves that you can fill in your open areas. I want to thank you all for attending today. I will stay on the line for a bit to answer questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to type those questions in, and I'll be addressing those. You will be receiving a recording link so you can view this recording again at your leisure. I do want to remind you that the Freestanding Lace Bouquet is a free gift with purchase during the month of April. Any downloadable design purchase of $69 or more, and you will receive the Freestanding Lace Bouquet for free. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day. I'll stay on the line for questions for a little while. If you have additional questions that you think of later, please feel free to email me at the email link that was provided when you signed up at the webinar. So the emails that you've been receiving from us, you can just reply to those and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Oh, good question. This is the first embroidery online webinar I've attended. How can I receive notification of future webinars? There's two places you can get notification of our webinars. Let me pull up one of them here. And we will send you this link in your email. We send you the link to the recording, which is our webinar archives page. Oops, I think I typed it in wrong. It's the e-webinar archives, and this link will be sent to you in your email. There will be a link if there's an upcoming webinar, will be listed here, and then our previous webinars you can watch from that same location. The question is, I have a wedding party soon. When can I get this collection? The collection's available now as a gift with purchase, and it will be available for sale starting May 1st. Okay, a couple more questions. The collection would be downloaded immediately after a $69 purchase? Yes. The collection will be automatically added to your cart whenever you check out if you've made a purchase of $69 or more in downloadable collections. So if you've added $69 or more to your cart of downloadable designs, then the freestanding lace collection will automatically appear in your cart. And then as soon as you check out, you can go to your My Account link and you'll be able to download it from there. So actually I'll pull that up and show you. Oops. So if I log in, oh, apparently that's not my password. If you were checking out, you would already be logged in. And as soon as that checkout process is complete, you can then click the View Account. And you'll also receive an email with these instructions. And then from View Account, you can go to the My Designs tab on the left. And all of the designs that you purchased, both the designs that you purchased for $69 and the freestanding lace collection would be here. And then from here, you click on that link to see the collection, and then you can click the download button, and you can get it immediately. Another question is, would you need to slow down the machine speed when working with cotton thread? Probably not. It depends on how heavy the cotton thread was. However, we do recommend that you may want to slow down the machine with these lace flowers a little bit anyway. So just do a test and see how it feels, how the machine seems to be handling the thread. Slowing it down is a really easy thing to do that solves a lot of problems. So if it seems to be wanting to break, slowing down the machine is a really simple solution. So it's possible, but most of the time a cotton thread is going to hold up as well as a polyester thread, unless it's a heavy or a specialty cotton thread. Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock here in Oklahoma, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks again to all of you for your questions. If you have additional questions, please feel free to email us. And we look forward to sending you a link to the presentation later today. Thanks.